So yesterday there's a report by AAIB that came up. Now we exactly know what happened, right? So let's go over point by point what exactly happened.
Right after takeoff, 3 seconds after takeoff, the plane hit a velocity of 180 knots. The first fuel cutoff switch transitioned from run to cutoff position. And then within 1 second, the second fuel cutoff switch transitioned from run to cutoff position. And then one of the pilots noticed it, and that pilot asked the other pilot,
"Why did you cut off?" "I did not do so."
So then they immediately, but before the engine could produce enough thrust so that the plane will get lift,
It was
it crashed.
so that makes it believe that there was a fault of the airline.
That's one possibility. The second possibility is that intentionally one of the pilots put those switches in the cutoff position. If a pilot has intentionally cut off the switches, why within a few seconds the pilots are trying to
Save.
save the aircraft?
Who will back pilots? Who will defend them? Right?
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
Even the lawyers will get like buyout. Let's get started. Thanks again, Subashish, to be in my channel. Mindfulness with Manish. You have been here multiple times. Thank you to be our guest. And for the people who are watching Subashish for the first time, just a recap. So Subashish has given multiple videos and podcasts on my channel on mindfulness, on spirituality. Recently, he gave a podcast on the flight that crashed recently in Ahmedabad. We went into the roots of the causes that happened, but we waited for the government to tell us what exactly happened. So yesterday there's a report by AAIB that came up, and this video is about that. We will go into the root causes and what came up in that report, and the next steps. As in, we will also talk about like what are some of the potential things and causes of the plane crash. So again, let's come back again. Thank you, Subhashish, to be in my channel.
Thank you, Manish, for inviting me.
Yeah, so let's go into like the report. What so just tell us like what is that report about? What is AAIB? And just start from the basics. Yeah.
Yeah, so AAIB is Aircraft Accident Investigation Board. It's a body in India which is like NTSB. NTSB is a similar US body. So this accident, because it was a Boeing jet, it's a US company. So both FAA and NTSB are also involved. AAIB is leading the accident investigation along with FAA and NTSB. And European bodies are also involved because this flight was going to London Gatwick. So this is a truly international collaboration to investigate and to find out what exactly happened, what led to this accident. And the reason these investigations happen is to ensure that if something needs to change in the aircraft design or something needs to change in the whole process that can avoid such incidents in the future, we find out what those things are and those changes are implemented. The whole idea is very unfortunate. 270 people died. So whenever such accidents, aircraft accidents happen, these investigations happen to ensure if there is anything avoidable that is avoided in the future, and in the future we avoid any loss of life.
Got it. Okay.
So this investigation report which came is a preliminary investigation report. The protocol for such aircraft accidents internationally is that within 30 days a preliminary report is submitted, and then within 1 year a more detailed report is.
So this is preliminary.
This is the
After
preliminary.
why take so much time to come up with the report? Like 1 hour, 1 year is a long time, right?
So when an aircraft crashes, the data that investigating bodies have access to later on, it includes the black box, which is the flight data recorder, and the voice recorder in the cockpit voice recorder. So based on the information that can be gleaned from these sources, investigators have to construct the whole situation and scenario, what may have happened. So they have to look at all the parameters which are there in the flight data recorder, and they have to investigate every lead which they may have. So when this sort of an accident happens, there could be pilot error, human error, there could be intentional sabotage, there could be hydraulic errors, there could be electrical failures, there could be mechanical failures, there could be electronic failure, there could be jamming, electronic spoofing, there could be nation state actors or bad actors involved. So there could be fuel contamination, there could be so many different possibilities what has caused this accident. So therefore, anytime an aircraft crashes, sufficient time is given, because the investigators have to look at every single possibility and figure out what actually happened. It's a very complex work.
Scenario. Okay. Okay, so that sounds good. So let's go into the report. What actually came? So last time it was all assumptions that what we talked about, like this could have happened, but now we exactly know what happened, right? So let's go over point by point what exactly happened.
So this is still a preliminary report. What exactly happened and what led to the crash, we would know it when the final report comes or the detailed report comes a year from now. What has come out in the preliminary report, it's a very detailed report, it's a 50 plus page report, but the focus of the report is on one thing, which is the fuel cutoff switches. There is a fuel cutoff switch for the left engine, there is a fuel cutoff switch for the right engine. So what the report says is, right after takeoff, the plane took off and the plane had sufficient thrust that it could take off. Right after takeoff, 3 seconds after takeoff, the plane hit a velocity of 180 knots. So it had reached peak velocity of 180 knots, and it was a few hundred feet above ground. What the investigators found out from the flight data recorder is that 3 seconds after the takeoff, when the aircraft had attained a velocity of 180 knots, the first fuel cutoff switch transitioned from run to cutoff position. And then within 1 second, the second fuel cutoff switch transitioned from run to cutoff position. So that's what the investigators found.
So first was one switch and second was the second switch happened.
Yes.
Okay, one after the other.
One after the other.
Okay, and that means, like, what is this fuel switch? Like, this is the switch that basically pipelines the fuel to the engine.
So these are the switches using which you can stop the flow of fuel to the engines.
To the engine.
Or you can start the flow of the fuels to the engine. So what usually happens is, when the pilot and the captain, when they are going to start an aircraft, when the aircraft is in a stationary position in the airport, so the first thing they will do is they will put these switches in the run position. So then fuel can actually flow to the aircraft engines, and then they will go through their checklist, and then they will start the takeoff roll. The aircraft will taxi, and it will go to the takeoff position. It will start the takeoff roll. It will take off. The last thing that the pilots do is, after they have landed and they have taxied and they have come to the stationary position at the gate, the last thing they do is they put the switches in the cutoff position, so that fuel doesn't go to the engines anymore. So that stops the engine. So this is the normal
routine
of what happens. And when a plane is taking off, the engines need the fuel, obviously. So when a flight is taking off, the pilots are never going to put the switch in the cutoff position. But in this particular instance, the flight data recorder says that the first fuel cutoff switch transitioned from run to cutoff, and then within 1 second, the second cutoff switch transitioned from run to cutoff. And then one of the pilots noticed it, and that pilot asked the other pilot, "Why have you moved the switch to cutoff position?" The other pilot said, "I have not done so."
Yeah.
So then they immediately transition the two cutoff switches from cutoff to run position. One of the engines starts revving up once again. So both the engines were lit. So both the engines go through relight. One of the engines almost comes back to the position where it could generate thrust. The other engine was still not in a position where it could generate thrust. But before the engine could produce enough thrust so that the plane will get lift,
It was already down.
it crashed because the whole flight was like 35 seconds. So, although one engine almost started producing thrust, but just before it could, just because of lack of altitude, it crashed.
So if the plane would have the altitude, then it could have been prevented,
Yes.
right?
So
if there was a little bit down, then it could have gone up also.
yes. So if the plane, instead of being say 400 feet, 500 feet high, if the plane was a few thousand feet high, then there would be enough
Situation would be
time
different,
that the
yeah.
engines would come up.
Okay. So that was one where the pilot was saying, okay, why did you turn off the switch, right? Other pilot said, no, I have not done it,
No.
right? So that makes it believe that there was a fault of the airline.
No. So see, if we look at what the possibilities are, right? One possibility is that mistakenly one of the pilots
That is one
put
possibility.
those switches in the cutoff
Yeah.
position. That's one possibility. The second possibility is that intentionally one of the pilots put those switches in the cutoff position. The third policy is that there was something wrong with those switches. There was some malfunction in the switches, and the switches automatically transition to cutoff position from run position. These are the three possibilities. In the same report, AAIB has mentioned that in 2018, FAA had given an advisory to airlines that these same switches which are in this Dreamliner, similar switches in 737 family of jets, uh, FAA had given an advisory that some of those switches had defects, and those switches could transition from run position to cutoff position inadvertently. So that was an advisory which was given, and the advisory was that the airline should check these switches, and if they find faults with those switches, then they should replace those switches with not faulty switches. Now, Air India said they did not do this inspection, and they did not know. I mean, because they did not do the inspection, they did not see whether the switches had faults in them, design faults in them, and they did not replace the switches. So we don't know whether the switches themselves had faults, and we don't know whether the switches transition by automatically the transition. So it's quite possible what could have happened is the plane took off. When the plane took off, the switches were in run position, but these switches may have been faulty switches, because when a plane is taking off, there is a lot of g force, there is a lot of gravitational pull on the plane, there is a lot of vibration in the cockpit. So it is possible if those switches were faulty switches, they automatically transition to cutoff position.
Got it.
And when the pilots noticed it, they put them back on the run position, but there was not enough time for the engines to come up.
Right. So that was, is that all that came up in the report or anything else we missed?
No, the other things that the report says is they have concluded that the plane did not have any the plane did not have any issues, like the plane did not have any electrical failure or mechanical failure or hydraulic failure. There was nothing wrong with Boeing's design, or there was nothing wrong with the GE engines. So rest of what the report says is they have investigated based on the flight data recorder and the voice cockpit recorder, and based on their findings they cannot point to anything being wrong with the aircraft. It seems everything was fine with the aircraft. The only thing which has gone wrong is they have recorded that these switches move to cutoff position, and subsequently in a few seconds they move to run position. And they have also mentioned that FAA had given this advisory that some of these Boeing switches have this problem. And we also know that this Dreamliner actually had
Issues.
those switches.
Okay.
So what we don't know is whether the switches in this particular Dreamliner were faulty or not. That we don't know.
Okay. Yeah, so that is the case. So I have a question about, like, when like any agency goes into like figuring out whether this airlines has fault or not. Like you mentioned, the hydraulic was working, everything was there. Only the switch might be the problem. The airlines does not exist, right? It burned out. So how they figure out, okay, this was the airlines, this has these many issues, this airline doesn't have that many issues. Based upon the previous flight, they figure out those data.
So you are talking about the aircraft,
Aircraft,
right?
yeah.
So the aircraft, it logs a lot of parameters. There's a number of parameters which are logged in
Black box.
the black box. So examining those parameters, the investigators can tell whether something was wrong with the aircraft or not. The second thing is that the investigators went through exhaustive review of the servicing history of the aircraft. What sort of servicing history was there? What kind of faults were there electronically? Electronically, you can find out, logging of this issue was there, that issue was there. So the investigators exhaustively went through the service history of the aircraft, and they went through the maintenance records, and they concluded that nothing is wrong or nothing was wrong with the aircraft. The only finding they could find was the cutoff switches and the conversation that one pilot asked the other, the switches are in cutoff position, why did you do it? And the other aviator said, no, I haven't
No,
done
yeah.
it. So that's all they found. But one thing I'll say is, this is a preliminary report. We should wait until the final report comes out, because I'll give you some examples. There were a couple of 737 max crashes which happened, I think, in 2018, 2019, around that time frame. So when those crashes happened, when the preliminary investigation report came out, the blame was placed on the pilots. The initial investigation report, when it came out, everybody said that it was a pilot error, it was a human error. But later on, in detailed investigation, it was found out that it was actually a systemic problem with Boeing 737 Max's MCAS system.
Yeah.
So what happens sometimes is, this investigation is still not as thorough as it will be after a year from now. So sometimes when the detailed investigation comes out, you actually uncover more details, right? And like the investigation is currently saying there was nothing wrong with the aircraft, in some of the other aircraft crashes also, the initial report said there was nothing wrong with the aircraft, because sometimes it requires a lot more analysis, a lot more investigation to actually find out that something was wrong with the aircraft. So those things can happen.
I feel like there's three parties involved in the investigation, or not in the investigation, like in this entire ecosystem. One is the airline company, which is like Boeing in this case. Then we have
the aircraft company.
Then we have AIB.
Yeah.
And third is the Air India.
Air India.
And fourth is the third party. You can call it pilots. I'm talking about the blaming.
Yeah.
So can we say it's hard to conclude whose blame is basically who the crash happened because of whom, or do you think we can conclude something, the crash happened because of this agency or this company or person?
So see, some very big companies are involved. Boeing is involved, GE is involved, and then Air India is also involved. So usually whenever a plane crash happens, everybody tries to blame the pilots. So this is not just for this accident. Almost any aircraft accident that has happened, usually, because it is in the interest of big companies, it is in the interest of Boeing, it is in the interest of GE, it is in the interest of Air India, that they say, look, like Air India would say there was nothing wrong with our maintenance. Boeing would say there was nothing wrong with our design or quality or production. GE will say there was nothing wrong with our engines, right? So whenever this kind of crashes happen, it is in everybody's interest that people will say it was a pilot error, it was a human error. And it is hard to actually find out that there was something wrong with the engine or there was something wrong with the aircraft. Usually that kind of investigation takes much more time. And the integrity of the investigators, because Boeing is a very big company, Boeing has record of lobbying and they have record of influencing, right? So the investigators need to be high integrity, completely not under the influence of Boeing or GE or Air India. Only then the truth will really come out.
Which is very hard also.
Which is hard, but which usually happens. Usually in the end the truth comes out, but maybe in this preliminary investigations or some initial discourses. For example, when the flight crash happened, immediately most of the experts in the internet, they started saying, oh, look at the fact that the landing gear did not go up. So what
Yeah,
that
exactly.
so what that means is the co-pilot, instead of taking the landing gear up, he pulled the wrong lever and he retracted the flaps. That's why the plane did not get enough lift and the plane crashed. So see what the experts did. They put the blame on the co-pilot. That he mistook between the landing gear lever and the flap lever, and that's why the crash happened. Now Air India simulated every single scenario which the experts talked about in simulators, and Air India pilots tried all these different scenarios in simulator. It was found out none of these scenarios caused the crash. And even when the investigators actually investigated for this preliminary investigation report, there was nothing, the flaps were set to 5-degree flaps configuration. The fact that the landing gear was down, that was not the reason the crash happened. But what I'm trying to tell you is, in the internet, first, there is a guy, his name is Captain Steve. He has a lot of YouTube following. Captain Steve immediately said it was the pilots who made a human error, and dual engine failure is like one in many billions of possibility. That did not happen. Dual engine failure did not happen. Pilots made a mistake. Now in some time we found out that both the engines were not working, there was not enough thrust, and the rat had deployed. So in time we know that it was not a human error, there was no flap problem, right? Then Captain Steve said, oh yeah, there was no human error. Now this time again, when the preliminary investigation report has come out, Captain Steve made a video and he said obviously the pilots have done it. Why pilots have done it we don't know, but pilots have done it. And then he talked about mental health of the pilots, and he talked about in his own flying experience how he has seen that mental health issues. But to conclude that pilots had mental health issues and that's why
They have done something like
they
that.
have done something like that, or the pilots wanted to commit suicide and they wanted to murder everybody, that's why they have done this, is extremely irresponsible. Like when
Yeah.
I go to YouTube, almost every video that I see, in almost every video, everybody, so-called experts, they are saying that the pilots have done it. But it's ridiculous to conclude something like that. I'll also give you a reason. If a pilot has intentionally cut off the switches, why within a few seconds the pilots are trying to
Save.
save the aircraft? Why
And
in a
that even telling that okay, the fuel is not working, the switch
yeah,
is off.
yeah, like they're surprised that the switch is in cut-off position,
Yeah.
and from the moment they found out, in 4 seconds or 6 seconds, something like that, they have immediately put the switches in
Yeah.
run position. If they did something wrong, if they intentionally did something wrong, why would they try to fix it?
Yeah.
The pilot issued made a call. They did their best to save the aircraft,
Yeah.
right? So if they were trying to intentionally cause a crash, why will they try to save the aircraft?
Yeah.
So this sort of like this sort of conjectures, almost every expert saying that it is actually pilots who have done this is ridiculous. And this is what happens in aircraft crashes. Whenever aircraft crashes happen, whether it is big aircraft manufacturers, or whether the airline, or whether the engine maker, almost everybody tries to blame it on pilots.
Is there anyone that on the pilot behalf they can say tell the voice of pilots, or is it just lawyers they have to hire?
So there are all these pilots bodies, but what I worry about is that there is so much influence by
Big companies.
the big plane
Because big
makers.
companies are like earning in billions of dollars,
Yeah, many
right?
billions.
And pilots are pilots,
Yeah.
right? Who will back pilots? Who will
Yeah.
defend them, right?
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
Even the lawyers will get like buyout.
And what happens is, even in the regulatory bodies, like if you look at FAA, so many of the people of FAA are from Boeing. So what happens is, all these different bodies which are there, and even the investigation agencies, the people who are doing investigations also, I'm not talking about this particular investigation, but in general, when investigations happen, there is a lot of influence from these big companies, and the pilots are scapegoated. So the blame is always placed on pilots. For example, all these people who have made YouTube videos and they're talking about the pilots have committed suicide, or the pilots have made a mistake, and how can a pilot make a mistake like this? Because these switches, you have to pull them up and then push them down. It takes multiple steps. So they're saying pilots have intentionally done it. Have they even read the report? Because the report is not saying pilots have done it. The report is saying the switch has transitioned. So the word used is transitioned. The investigators have not concluded that the pilots did it. They are saying the switches have transitioned. And the second thing is, the investigators have also mentioned that FAA gave this advisory where they said there are defects with the switches, and these switches can transition from run position to cutoff position. So I don't understand what kind of journalism or what kind of YouTube content creation is this, where you are selectively picking the pilots have done it, but you are not saying that FAA advisory is saying that even switches malfunction can happen.
Yeah.
So it's very, either is very irresponsible or is very motivated.
Yeah, that is true.
So I think this is all we know right now. I really hope that the investigators carry out an independent investigation without any bias or without any influence from Boeing or other companies or Air India. I really hope that the truth prevails
out.
and the truth comes out. Now it may take time. You know, there are some aircraft crashes where after many years also we don't know the truth, right?
Exactly, that Malaysian Airlines that got vanished or disappeared.
Yeah.
What happened with that?
We don't know yet.
Nobody knows that, right?
Nobody
There's
knows
no
after
black
so
box.
many years also. The black box hasn't been found out. Where the plane has disappeared, we
Is it
don't know.
disappeared or somebody is hiding the truth? That plane went like crashed somewhere else.
So it obviously the plane would have crashed, or let us assume we are assuming that the plane would have crashed. But
Yeah.
where did the plane crash?
Maybe in a country like North Korea where nothing goes out of the information.
So
I'm just assuming.
that particular plane, although it stopped communicating with the ATCs all around the world, but there are these automated pings which go from engines to satellites. There is a satellite system which is called Inmarsat, and with Inmarsat, what happens is these satellites are getting pings from the engines and some parameters about the engine performance and the engine health. These are communicated to the satellites. So Inmarsat actually found the path that the plane took. So apparently MH370, it flew for several hours, I think like 15 hours or something it actually flew. And the last ping that Inmarsat got from the aircraft was when the aircraft was at very low altitude. It was probably about to crash in the ocean, in Pacific Ocean, somewhere around the Australian area.
Exactly. Might have crashed over there, but that also we can find out, right?
It might have crashed. Now, we have this information from Inmarsat. Like, the investigators have been able to trace the path that the plane took. And the last pings where the plane was there. But Pacific Ocean is such a vast ocean, and the ocean currents can take the debris to so many places. So what has happened is, till today we have found some debris of MH370. Some debris, but we have not found all the debris. We have not found the black box. So because some debris was found out, because the last ping was there in the Australian region, in the Pacific Ocean, we know that the plane crashed in that region. But Pacific Ocean is so deep, it is so vast, ocean currents can take the debris in so many places. We haven't been able to locate the debris yet.
Okay, so that was one of the worst crashes, I would say.
Yes.
What other crashes happened in the history of aviation?
Many crashes happened, and most cases we know the reason. The aircraft investigation agencies actually found out what happened, but there are some cases where we don't know what happened. There are many crashes in Bermuda Triangle. Many crashes which happened in Bermuda Triangle, we still don't know what caused.
Bermuda Triangle, the thing is the gravitational force. Right?
We don't know. These are all conjectures. These are all conjectures that the gravitational force, the electromagnetic force is a certain way. There are conjectures that the weather pattern in that area is very deceptive and is very dangerous. So there are all theories.
So also some people say there's a ghost or some other thing over there.
Aliens. There are all kinds of theories.
People try to avoid that airspace, right? Even for ships right now.
Ships and planes, people are generally a bit concerned when they navigate through that airspace. There has been hundreds of crashes which have happened in that area. So fact of the matter is, most aircraft crashes, investigators are able to find out what happened, but in some cases they are not able to find out. My hope is, in this particular case, by the time the detailed investigation report is out, investigators are able to find out what happened.
Yeah, we hope so too.
Until then, my request to everybody would be, don't conclude that the pilots intentionally did it or pilots accidentally did it. It's a pilot error. We don't know.
Yeah, and also don't watch like any videos with no data or people blaming anyone without any conclusive like backing. Like, this is something that has been done by some agency like AIB or some other agency, and just telling like rubbish thing like it has been done by pilots, things like that.
Absolutely, like all this Captain Steve video, it has got so many views. Captain Steve is very popular
Because
in
these
Europe.
people are just after views and followers.
Yeah.
They say something controversial that they think that people will like, and that's what people are after, right? And then they don't know like the harm it will cause by spreading the misinformation and things like that. So that's what I think we should prevent doing that.
And they are not experts, they are not investigators.
Yeah.
So maybe even with the right intention, what they are saying is not right because they are not experts, they are not investigators. And you have track record of some of these big YouTube pilots and YouTube influencers who have been repeatedly wrong. Like even when the crash happened, their first video they were wrong, right? They may be wrong even now.
Yeah.
So we should not believe in what these people are saying. Instead, we should patiently wait for the authorities to complete the investigation. My only real concern and hope here is this investigation happens without influence and it happens without any bias, and the truth prevails and the
Yeah.
truth comes out.
Sounds good. I also hope so. Again, we get some enlightenment by talking to Subhashish about this topic. Is there anything else that we missed in this entire
No, I think we are good for
information?
now. As we get more information, if we get some more definitive information which actually sheds light on what really happened, how did this cutoff switches move to cutoff position. So once we figure these things out, we will probably do another update.
Okay.
Like one conjecture is, somehow for reasons that are not known, right after the takeoff, both the engines failed. And because both the engines failed in a hurry, the pilots might have sort of toggled these switches. Like they brought the switches to cutoff position, and to relight the engines, they again put it to run position. It is possible that something else caused both the engines to fail. And in the flight data recorder, the fact that they're seeing that there is a transition and there is a transition back, it might be the pilot's frenetic attempt to correct what was going on with the engines. But again, at this point, we don't know.
We can't
This is
conclude,
all
yeah.
conjecture. So let's wait and we'll figure it out.
Okay, sounds good. Cool, man. Thank you so much again to be in my channel. I learned a lot. I hope the audience also learned a lot. We'll have another podcast on this topic whenever new news comes out, or probably in a year or so. But until that time, please don't follow those people who just say anything without any data. That's something
Absolutely.
we should not be doing. Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you so
Manish.
much. Yeah, nice meeting you again.
Nice.